Hey everybody out there in TDF world. My name is Anthony Rapp, and who's this guy?
My name is Daniel Weiss. I'm the music director of Anthony's show, Without You.
What show is that, Dan?
That's a show called Without You.
Interesting.
Little show. You may have heard it.
Yeah, and it's a one-man show. We were asked also to describe ourselves, so for anybody who might be visually impaired, I'm wearing my reading glasses because I'm visually impaired and I won't be able to see the screen in front of me if I don't wear them. I wear my contacts in the show. I'm wearing big black headphones that help me record well. I'm wearing a t-shirt, a gray t-shirt. It says no on the top. You don't see the punchline at the bottom, but you don't have to worry about that. I'm in my dressing room at the theater. So behind me are boxes actually filled with books of mine, the memoir that my show is based on, that I've been signing for people who are coming to the show, special guests and stuff like that. I think you can see like back here, one of my shirts or something in the mirror, and the dressing room lights are behind me. And Dan is encased in shadow a little bit.
Am I?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
Do you want to describe yourself, Dan?
Or if you'd prefer to be. Yes, I am wearing a shirt, a button-down blue shirt over a black t-shirt. I have very little hair. In fact, some have said none. And what else?
And you have a warm and inviting face.
And well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
And just wanted to say hi to all the TDF fans.
And they've sent us some questions, Dan. So
okay, all right.
Do you want to read or do you want me to read it? How do you want to do it?
Sure, I'll read. And away we go. So you've known each other for decades, ever since working together on Rent on Broadway. Did you become instant friends?
I would say no. We did not become instant friends.
No.
And we actually met at downtown at the New York Theater Workshop, which we did, where we did the show for a couple months before we moved to Broadway.
That's right.
Yeah, it wasn't instant enemies, but it's certainly, the time that the cast, we were so close, and we were working so directly with Michael, and then Tim, our music director, was most prominently in our lives on a daily basis. The band didn't really come until the very end of the rehearsal process.
Right.
And then once the band came in, Jonathan died and everything was so nuts for a while. So it took time, I think, for us to really be able to have more time to get to know the band and then become friends as the process went on.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
I think so. Yeah. Close friends are hard to find. I think we had a very unusual shared experience, and we were certainly friendly to each other, we didn't. And it was an unusual situation for the band, because usually a Broadway band has no connection whatsoever with the cast, and we had a wonderful kind of exclusive situation where the band was sort of included as the family, but still musicians hang with musicians, actors hang with actors, and eventually they start to pollinate. But that took a while. But I think we got to be, I think we really bonded on the road. We did, in Korea and.
We got to perform in Korea. We performed.
It was a hell of a war.
Yeah, because we also do concerts together. So
right.
And I can't remember exactly what year we started doing that together. It was sometime in the early 2000s, but I don't remember exactly when. But
was it early
or maybe late 2000? What is time, Dan?
Because that's a good question. But I think you left the show. And then I don't think we saw each other for a good decade or so, which would have brought us up to, 2005, 2006, something like that.
Yeah. And then, with working on music together for the concert was a great experience. And we also did an off-Broadway, like a very, very small off-Broadway play a number of years ago. I played a singer, and the playwright was interested with our friend and director, who's also a producer, Chris Henry, who's also one of the producers of our show Without You. asked if we would maybe write some songs for it. So that was the first time we actually collaborated together creatively in that way too, where we wrote together.
Yeah.
And that when we wrote together like that, and so that when we started working Without You, it was very natural to fold Dan into that process, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Should I read this one, or you want to read it? You read it.
Anthony, you published your memoir Without You in 2006 and almost immediately started adapting it for the stage. How did Daniel, my involvement impact the creative process?
Well, actually, I first started working with people. I intentionally initially approached working on it with people who were not a part of the Rent history. I thought that would probably bring a lot of good objectivity to it. So I initially was working with a different music. It was much looser. He was not, Dan is a true music director. Like, he's a true orchestrator and a true like conductor. This was a guitarist and musician that I knew was very talented named David Matos, who I'd also been playing gigs with. So we wrote songs together for it, and then he helped kind of put it together, put the band together. But he's not the kind of music director that Dan was, but he was somebody who helped like put the first imprint on the adaptation process. So then when we were continuing to move forward with it, it felt necessary to get, I don't know, more of a conductor role, really a music director who could do all the things that Dan does so brilliantly. So that's when, so I can't remember which point of the process. It was still a year or two at least into the process when Dan officially came on board. And then, yeah, so how it impacted it was made everything that much more fully realized musically, more seamless. You know, there's underscoring stuff that Dan really got his head and heart and musical chops around, and then helped threading through all the orchestrations and put his huge, incredible stamp on it. And then it turned out that the familiarity with Rent and the deep understanding of the material, I think, then ultimately became a huge benefit moving forward. Because when we are pulling apart the songs and rearranging them, Dan knows them inside and out. So that helps inform those choices.
Well, thank you for all of that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Moving on. Anthony, Without You isn't just about Rent. It's also about the deaths of creator Jonathan Larson and your mother. What do you each hope audiences take away from the show?
No, Dan, I would love for you if you could answer this first, because I've answered questions sort of like this, and I really would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, well, take away a lot of merch, first of all.
Oh,
yeah. It actually reminds me of what you told me recently about somebody who came to the show and their mother had recently died, and you were afraid that it was going to be an awful experience because of the how recent that was, but it actually turned out to be quite a cathartic experience. And he said that it really helped him a lot with going through that pain. So that would be lovely if because unless you're really, really young, you understand what loss is, and if this show provides some kind of distraction or if it's sympathetic with your situation, that's a wonderful thing. That's pretty much, and it's also just really great entertainment. And Anthony, I think you're a great storyteller. And so if people go away feeling like they just saw a really great piece of theater, that would be a wonderful thing.
That's cool. Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I'm following in Jonathan's footsteps in so many ways. But I feel like he set this beautiful example through his work of really trying to tell the truth about the human experience and the layers of the human experience. And he had lost friends of his, and he wrote Rent in many ways to honor people he'd lost. And so I'm also trying to do that. And also, people, they're gone. My mom and Jonathan are gone. Absolutely. Like, they no longer live on this planet. And at the same time, their legacy and their spirit and what they've given me and what they've given so many other people live on. So it's also a way to honor that legacy and keep them alive, as while also not pretending that they're not dead. So it's an interesting, that sort of, abstract reality, I guess, but that it's still, they're very much still here. I mean, I could say personally, I am talking to them both every day now that I'm doing the show, and I feel very, very close to them. So on a selfish level, that's what I get. But I hope that also others who are seeing the show could maybe get a sense of who these people, these really important, powerful people were, and maybe they can take a piece of their story into their hearts too.
Yeah. It can be also an interesting revelation that profound sadness and profound joy could be occurring at exactly the same time in some
Yes. Yep.
Oh yeah.
And get him out of there. Okay.
Do you want to keep reading the questions?
Sure.
Sure.
Rent was groundbreaking and prescient, but also very much of its time. Has your perspective on the characters changed over the decades?
I'm not sure my perspective on the characters has changed, but I mean, I think it's undeniable that Rent is a period piece in the largest sense, because of the way the East Village is so different now than it used to be. I mean, the East Village still has some of that edge and character that it used to, but it's mostly gentrified now and mostly much more, upscale in so many ways. But also right when Rent happened was right before the protease inhibitors and the different medications came out for HIV and AIDS medicine. So the circumstances of the HIV positive characters' lives in Rent would have been very different if it had been just a couple years later. Right. Although you could also argue that their access to those new medications probably would have been very limited. So maybe not, but no, beyond that, I mean, not really my perspective on them. I mean, I think that they're really idealistic, and I think they would be idealistic today. I think that young people today are showing us so much their own, like the younger generations are like as idealistic and as fervent about justice as anybody I've ever seen on the planet. So in terms of young people, I think that they're very much of a piece with that.
Yeah, it's not that.
I agree with you. I also think that the piece in many ways is timeless, and it's not period, because the messages, especially like the no day but today message, that's a message for all the time, like live in the moment and not too much in the past and not too much in the future, and you'll be a happier person. Do a little meditating.
Yes.
And I know this is true because, like, when we've toured it around the world, young people come up to me and say, the show Rent literally changed my life.
Yeah.
And they don't care what period it was in. Like, they just feel it. You know, like, there's a lot of universal truths in Rent.
Absolutely.
Aside from the surface story. Anyway, next question.
Very, very wise, Dan.
This one. If you still had an answering machine, what message would be on it now?
Speak.
Yeah, same message. Leave your, I'm available.
Available for what exactly?
Leave your
Birthday
message.
Parties? Birthday parties?
No.
Bar mitzvahs? Weddings?
I did a lot of weddings before Rent.
I believe you.
Yeah.
So did Adina.
And I know, we were sort of in the same world in different orbits, but uh, this brings me to an interesting story that
Sure.
when I started doing Rent, I'll make it quick. When I started doing Rent, that was the first musical theater piece that I ever did. I had absolutely no experience in theater whatsoever. A lot like Adam Pascal,
Yes.
and I just had I played piano and I played guitar and I guess I had a convincing story, but I was sort of hired. How I got hired, I called up Anthony Rapp. I called up Tim Weil and left a message on his machine and said, I heard about this great show that you're working on. If I could help you, please let me know. And 2 hours later, he called back and he said, I'd love you to do it.
How did you know about the show?
The guitar player, Dan Carter, who was a friend of mine who's gone now, he told me about it, and he said, "Yeah, give Tim a call." And so it was virtually cold call, and it was the luckiest thing in my life.
Wow.
That had happened business wise to that point. And so I went from never having done anything in musical theater to having to conduct and assistant music direct the 1996 Tony Award winning show.
Yes.
So it was amazing. A real learn while you earn kind of
yes, yeah. You know that Adam and Adina, they're similar. Like Adam, it was almost like a dare, essentially.
Oh, really?
Audition in the first place. And Adina too. There was something. I'm going to totally mess up the story, but there's some way that there was some person that they both went to high school together, but there was another person involved who also kind of like separately encouraged both of them to do it, or had some connection. They didn't know that each of them was, up for this. But it was all pretty random too, in a certain way, and then suddenly, it's just, yes. Yeah, I know. And I had been auditioning for any number of things that I'd almost hadn't gotten a gig, and I was struggling. And if I'd gotten any of those other gigs, I wouldn't have been available to do Rent.
Well, I had to choose between doing Rent and doing 2 weeks at the Marriott Marquis in the lounge.
Wow.
And I almost took that Marriott gig because it paid like 4 times more than Rent off Broadway.
Oh, well, thank you for making the right choice.
Yes.
Wow.
Thank you, heavens. Oh, okay. With the recent Tick, Tick, Boom movie and Rent Live, Jonathan Larson's work is reaching a whole new generation. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel really, really, really happy that, especially with Tick, Tick, Boom, that people are getting to know that much more of his work. I mean, he was so prolific. Not everything he wrote was perfectly brilliant. I mean, he had some clunkers, but he was so brilliant. And I mean, he was a genius. And so the Tick, Tick, Boom is filled with some great, great songs that not only the songs, but also then his story and getting to know more about him personally and how much he cared about what he was doing. I love that is in the world and that people are able to experience that. And it's very meaningful. I get messages all the time too on social media from people who are doing Rent in any place in the world at any given time. I get probably, I wouldn't say daily, but probably at least weekly, somebody somewhere reaching out saying they're doing a production of Rent in their high school or community theater, or, in different countries. It's incredible that it continues to have such a life. Yeah. I loved what they did. I loved the movie Tick, Tick, Boom. I remember seeing the show and thinking, well, that was good, but I thought the movie really, really like took it to actually another level. And I don't think, like I was saying before, I don't think it's a new thing that young generations love Rent. I think they've been loving it right along. I mean, wherever we go on the planet, people say, "Oh my God, we're so happy you're here." It's really such a heartwarming thing to know that I played a relatively small part in
something that meant so much to so many people that went around the globe.
Okay, I'm going to make a big argument with you about relatively small, because the signature organ sound of Seasons of Love, you created that. And that is one of the things that I think people instantly think of when they think of that song, and that's yours. So I don't think that's such a small part. I mean, there's other things you did too, but that was like.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Don't expect any other nice things from me all day.
I never do.
Next question.
Hang on.
Uh-oh. Is that it? Oh.
Anthony, your original Mark costume from Red is part of the TDF costume collection and is currently on display at the Museum of Broadway. Have either of you been to see it yet?
Well, Daniel Weiss, as a matter of fact, I have, but wait, where is it in my, oh, here it is. Yeah, I was looking for it in my Instagram. Yes, I have. There's a picture of me standing next to it, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, it's not the one I wore. The one I wore is in my closet. I absconded with that thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's only because like no one else could have worn it. It was falling apart. Like they were retiring it from circulation.
Okay.
But no, I have that. But yes, it's the original design of the costume. It means a great deal. I mean, it's really wild that. I mean, what we did was like we were just doing a show. We were just putting our hearts and heads together to try to create something the best we could, and then it became iconic on its own. Yeah. And so it lives on, and I've been at conventions or even other places and seeing people cosplaying as Mark, and it brings me a great deal of joy. Yeah, every time. But now, to know that people can like pose next to it is pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. And it's also surreal. I don't know. There's no other life experience that quite is the same thing as like having a museum exhibit that has something. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's very strange.
I haven't seen it, but I did like the Great Mummies of Broadway exhibit, though. You know what? I still have my tortoiseshell green shirt from Rent.
Yeah.
Somehow they didn't ask for that for the museum, but
we should get on that. We should get these TDF folks to put it in the collection.
Yeah. I mean, where are you going to see something like that besides my closet?
Right.
Okay, you could put that up now. During the theater shutdown, there was an industry-wide reckoning about the treatment of artists. In your opinion, Anthony, what's gotten better and what work is still left to be done?
Well, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of conversation around the notion of the grind. The grind is something, I grew up in the theater when I was a kid. I did 8 shows a week from the get-go. Now kids can't do 8 shows a week. My understanding anyway is if you're a kid, you're limited. You can maybe do 6, maybe sometimes 4. Yeah. I think as a kid, I would have been like, what? Wait a second. I want to do all 8 shows. But anyway, so that's part of the reckoning of like how hard it's been expected that people have to work to do this work. So I think that, there's been a reckoning and a conversation around health and wellness that isn't just about COVID, but also around physical therapy and massage and, the recognition that when you're doing 8 shows a week, there's parts of your body that start to kind of degrade when you do the same thing over and over and over again. That's one of them. There's also been this massive reckoning, necessary reckoning around racism that's entrenched so deeply in the storytelling and the industry that has always been a part of it. And there have been bursts and moments where things broke through. And our show, I think, was part of that, where it was a show that was multicultural, multi-ethnic, LGBTQ, but it was rare. And it's gotten a little less rare, but it's still, there's still like blind spots that I think a lot of writers and casting directors and producers and directors haven't even been aware how much they've not looked at certain kinds of performers. They thought, you know, things that you could only have a certain kind of performer play a certain kind of role. That's starting to get exploded, and that's gotten better, but it still, I think, has a long way to go. I mean, when I was a kid, I did The King and I with Yul Brynner, who was the original king. And there were Asian actors in the show, but there were also white actors who wore Asian makeup. And this is 1982.
Right.
You know, and that's years before Miss Saigon and the controversy there. So there's any number of areas where these things, you know, have certainly turned a corner and gotten better. That's something I believe that would never happen again, for instance. But there still remains ongoing need to keep looking at these things in the deep in the eye and in the heart, making sure that, you know, we're casting as wide a net as possible, and we're opening up the doors to all kinds of folks to be able to tell their stories and be represented in their work.
Yeah. Well, I think you're absolutely right. And all great points. I don't have much to add to that. I wasn't a child actor. My struggle was getting pizza 4 times a week, not how many, not doing shows.
What do you mean getting pizza 4 times a week? What are you talking about?
You know, just like trying to get my mother to get me pizza 4 times a week. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't concerned about how many shows I was going to do, because it hadn't yet entered my mind.
I understand.
Could edit this out if you need to. Yeah. Besides, without you, what's a dream show you'd love to collaborate with me on?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I would love to keep trying to think of other things to write together. I mean, I think we really have a good thing going when we write together. I think, you know, we write quickly together. We have, you know, to me, great collaboration is when we don't speak exactly the same language,
right?
But we can, the language I speak, the language you speak, about some of the musical ideas, they kind of go like this. So it'd be cool to keep thinking. It's just hard for me to imagine right now thinking of other subjects I'd want to write, because I'm so entrenched in this. Like, I can't even imagine what other ideas I might have. But, anyway, but that, you know, so a show that hasn't happened yet, in terms of shows that have already existed, this one of the shows that I've always wanted to do is play the MC in Cabaret. But I don't know if that's a show that you'd be interested in working on the music of or anything, you know. But it's a little, I would imagine for you, I'm just going to speak for you, knowing you, I think that you probably would be that much more interested in doing new material than, like, you know, a show that's already been done before. But I could be wrong.
I do like to do new material, and of course, my background is more from the rock and roll blues world, so that's the type of shows I tend to wind up on. But you know, not that I mean, I love jazz also, and I love, but. There are music directors who are much better at that than I am. This is, you know, what we do is something that, not that I can't manage a larger cast, but it's just the genre of the music. But I did. I was fortunate to music direct a show by Duncan Sheik in London at the Palace, at the New Palace, called The Whisper House. And I got to work with Duncan, and I really fell in love with that. His writing just kills me, you know. So I would love to do Spring Awakening. I
love that show. Yeah, I'm a little old to do that show, and I can't play those parts.
Well, you could direct it.
Oh, I could direct. Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, and I totally agree with you. Would love to write something else. You know, I'd love to be on the ground floor with something that you wrote. That would be a great honor and joy.
Cool.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, TDF. Last question. What's the best? I'm going to say this one because I'm like, what's the best deal I ever got at the TKTS booth? Well, when I was a kid working here, I don't remember what the amount of money was because I was 10, but that was my mom and I would go. I was doing this. It was a Broadway musical called The Little Prince and the Aviator that never opened. It only previewed for 2 weeks. But when I was in rehearsal, we saw a show pretty much every night, and we had no money. So we went to the TKTS booth to get all of our tickets. Yeah. And so I saw Chorus Line, I saw Barnum, I saw Pirates of Penzance, you know, on and on and on. all of them were at the TKTS booth. I never paid full price for a ticket for a Broadway show, certainly not then. So
Yeah.
that I wouldn't be able to tell you how much it was. I think some of those tickets probably were in 1982, probably like $10, $15, probably something like that. I mean, sometimes they were up in the nosebleeds, you know, but I still can picture in my mind's eye being a little kid and looking down on the Broadway stage, even from up there. So I'm very, very, very grateful that TKTS booth exists.
Oh yeah, yeah, great thing. Yeah, well, 4 or 5 years ago, I wanted to see Jersey Boys, and I think, I don't know, the ticket was it was a very good deal. I can't remember exactly what it was either, but you know, I loved the show, of course. But while I was on the line, this woman walked by selling waters for 50 cents a piece. So I bought 3.
There you go.
That was a deal.
That was the deal. There you go. The best deal you ever got.
That was absolutely the best deal I ever got on that line.
And there you're seeing my friend and costume designer Angela Vesco, who's doing the costume design for this show. It's a very, you know, very simple design, but it is still designed and very important. And she's been a part of our show over the number of years too. So I'm very, very happy that she's continuing to be a part of this. So as you see, we try to keep our family alive. You know, a couple of the other musicians in the band, Paul Gill, who's our bass player, is somebody that I've been playing with for 20 years or so. And Dan, we've been doing gigs together. Jerry is more recent. Our drummer is more recent addition, but now for a few years we've been doing gigs together. And now I think it's important for us to say too that our longtime guitarist passed away at the end of last year, and we have a wonderful new guitarist as part of our band, but we are also dedicating our performances to our friend and collaborator David Balakowski, who was a wonderful part of our musical family for all these years. And then very, very recently we have a new cellist as well, Larita El Time, our new cellist, who's been wonderful. So yes, we keep it in the family. Brian Ronan, who's our sound designer, was one of the original board mixers of Rent at
we love Brian.
And Eric Southern, who's our lighting designer, now set designer, has also worked on the show for a number of years. And Steve Mailer, my longtime friend, I've also worked together with him for almost 20 years now, or actually over 20 years. I'm so grateful to him and everybody who's been able to make this show possible. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been nice hanging with you in the virtual space. I'm about to see you in another few minutes in person again, Dan, because
I look forward.
We're going to be doing another we're recording this on the day that we're doing our dress rehearsal. So
yeah. A long, long day, but it's been fun. Thank you, fans.
It has been fun. Thank you. Thank you so much.